Finding out you are autistic late in life may bring up thoughts, feelings and emotions that you may not have expected after finding out you're autistic. I know that has certainly been the case for myself. Hi, I'm Amanda McGuinness and I am autistic. I received an autism diagnosis late in life at the age of 39. I think for myself, the strongest thought process I had after being identified as autistic, say formally, and again, I always say this on my videos, self-identification is valid. So if you're thinking, oh well, I haven't gone for a formal assessment, I might not have any of these thought processes, it really, for me, was just a matter of finding someone objective to tell me what they thought, because I still have at times, but did have such a strong sense of I can't trust myself because I get things wrong, not academically, because I would say I thrive academically, but for me, socially and just really in relation to myself, I could never really trust my own voice or thought processes in relation to myself, because I always felt I used to get things wrong. So if you are self-identified, that is 100% valid. For me, I just needed to go a route of somebody that didn't know me to tell me I was autistic, and that's really been really reaffirming for myself, and it has been life-changing in so many ways, which I've talked about previously in my very first YouTube video, which I will attempt to link here somewhere. I'm not really sure how to do that, but I will attempt to put up a link if I can. I guess for me, it really has changed my life, and more than anything, I feel like I've been in this process of, I think, self-realization, self-understanding, self-acceptance, and even more than anything, I think, reconceptualizing what it means to be me, to me, if that makes sense. I think for me, the first really overwhelming feeling or thought or emotions I had after finding out I was autistic was that I had this strong sense of, I feel seen, I was right, I am autistic, I am different, and different is okay. The first really strong sense I have was one that I feel seen. Somebody else can see me for me, and it's not you're flawed, you got that wrong, you talk too fast. I think it was a really strong sense of, I know where I belong now, and I know now that the reason I wasn't fitting in, say, in mainstream culture, in mainstream communities, was that actually I didn't belong there. I'm a member of the autistic community. I have autistic children. I also have a neurotypical child. But in particular, I know where I belong as regards my own, I suppose, self-acceptance, self-actualization, self-understanding. Those moments in my life where I felt, I would say it was almost kind of dissociative, where I had this really strong sense of, this is who I think I am, but society is saying I'm not a good enough version of whatever normal is. I stopped having that feeling almost immediately. It was suddenly a sense of, you were right, you are different, and now you know why you're different, now you know where you belong, and now you can really focus in on what does it mean to be me, to me, as opposed to maybe me thinking, oh, I got that social situation wrong, oh, I got that moment wrong, oh, I said the wrong thing, ruminating over moments in my life where I got things wrong, and now saying, actually, I can see why that happened, and now I know where I belong, and it's okay. So for me, it brought a great sense of peace, and I don't even know if serenity is the right word, but a sense of calmness. Like the storm of searching was over, now there was calmness, and now I could give myself time to just be me, and to not keep having to try to be anybody else, and not in a conscious way, but just more of a, it's okay that you like rainbows, and it's okay that you love books, and it's okay that you've decided out of the blue to dye your hair pink. It's okay that whatever you choose to do for yourself and surround yourself with, that's okay, and that's valid, and that's a good thing if it makes you happy and feel safe and calm, and that's your autistic joy, that's okay, that you don't have to be like everybody else. Being yourself is more than enough. And in a lot of ways, it is euphoric, having that realization of feeling seen. But then I found myself kind of going into this second kind of emotion. Apologies if you hear noise, that's my rainbow fidget I always kind of have when I'm concentrating or attempting to concentrate. I had this sense of, but if I've spent 39 years being this particular way, the way that I think society wanted me to be, this whatever that would look like for another person. For me, it was the sense of, you're not a good talker, or I felt I wasn't a good talker. You talk too fast, so don't speak too much when you're out. Try and avoid going out, which I definitely did all my life. Avoided as many social situations as I could. I tried to be the best version of what I felt I was supposed to be, and worked against my own strong inclinations of, what it meant to be me. I really worked hard on trying to appear and it wasn't a conscious manipulation. It was more a sense of, you're getting this wrong, you need to try harder, you need to talk a certain way, you need to, when I was in secondary school, I used to have a notebook. If you're like myself and in your late 30s, and if you live in Ireland, you'll remember the science books. It kind of had like a red cover with a black trim on the side, and I used to have this book that I used to call the Book of Transformation, and I would take notes every day, not like actively within the day of the school day, but when I would go home, I'd be like, so when you talk to somebody in the hall, so we would have had a main hall in the school where I went. At break time and lunchtime, everyone used to gather there. When you're in the hall, you say X, Y and Z, and then everybody else will say ha ha ha, or laugh or whatever, and then I would try maybe the next day or the day after to maybe do that particular routine randomly with some people, and it didn't work. And I obviously know now it didn't work, but back then it was like, oh, you did it wrong, you should have said it a different way. Watch and observe some more. So for me, trying to be like everyone else was a constant process of research and understanding, and looking at that I'm flawed and I've got all these things wrong. And I think now understanding I'm autistic has just changed my life irrevocably. I always think I can't say that word properly. Irrevocably. It's really changed my whole sense of self-acceptance, but it also makes me wonder. So for example, I love rainbows. Do I love rainbows because I love rainbows, or do I love rainbows because I love rainbows, or is that the masking Amanda going, you love rainbows for whatever the reasons? So I find myself now questioning, is that the masked Amanda liking those things or saying those things, or is that your true self? And what I find most is that when I'm in my home environment here in my lovely little cottage here in the west of Ireland, when I'm here surrounded by all my rainbow loveliness, if you can see around the room, there's books everywhere, there's rainbows everywhere. I've a dedicated I would call it maybe a homeschool room here in the house, but it's also my office, which is essentially full of rainbows really, and everything bright and colourful and just what I love. But then I keep wondering, are these things I love, or are these a masked Amanda? Did I feel at some point in my life that this would be socially acceptable? So for me, it's a process of working through what my thoughts and feelings are on lots of different things, and trying to figure out, is this what I really like or enjoy or feel on the topic, or is this what the masked Amanda felt should be the case in order to fit into society, if that makes sense. The third process then I find myself going through really is this sense of sadness in a way, looking back on my life, the young Amanda in primary school, the teenage Amanda, the young adult Amanda, the later in life Amanda, looking at those moments in my life and having this great sense of sadness for all the struggles, all the writing in the Book of Transformation, all the observing on the schoolyard at break time, the attempts to make friends, the attempts to be accepted, the rejections, the moments where if it had been understood that I was autistic, I could have hopefully accessed accommodations. I was thinking about that today actually. When I was in primary school, randomly one day, I can't remember what, but my teacher at the time was working on a project, and for God knows what reason decided it was a good idea to bring a power tool into the classroom. I feel like it was like a drill, because it definitely was a drill. He was drilling something into a huge board of wood for a big display on something. And I just remember I was panicked, because I'm very sensitive to sound and light. You might notice if any of my videos that will ever make it onto YouTube, it's generally very low lighting, and that's because I'm very sensitive to lights. In fact, it actually would hurt my eyesight, but I'm also very visual, so I take in things very quickly visually, so I have to keep the lights low so I can concentrate, and also for sensitivity, but I'm also very sensitive to sound. And I just remember he was drilling into the timber, and it just made sense to me to cover my ears and to scream as loud as I could, because I understood what my own scream would sound like, and that seemed to be a safer option for me within my own mind, I suppose, then listening to the drill into the timber, and I remember he stopped the drill and I got into so much trouble for obviously screaming in the middle of a classroom. But for me, that was a safer option than listening to the drill, because the drill would just make my brain want to explode. And everyone else around me just seemed to be sitting there not really noticing the drill. And I was like, why did I do that? Why didn't I just get on with it and not cause a scene? And anyway, I ended up being asked to leave the classroom, which was actually, may have been seen as like, that's a punishment. But for me, it was the best, because then I had to go into a quiet classroom and I wrote like a really, I can't remember what I think at the time we had to write an essay or something, but I went into the other classroom. Then there was only myself and a teacher. I wouldn't say it was like a detention, it was more you got into trouble for screaming, go into this room. And I sat down and I concentrated, and it was heaven. It was so quiet. And then afterwards, obviously the teacher came in to talk to me when he'd finished doing all the drilling, and he read my essay, or it wouldn't have been very long, I would have been in primary school, whatever that would have been. And I remember going, did you write that yourself? And I was like, yeah, I did. And I was just like, well, I could just concentrate, and my brain wasn't so loud. And he was perfectly lovely to me and everything. It was just, it would have been nicer not to have been kicked out of the classroom because I screamed. But I can see in a classroom where you can't scream, but also in that moment I was trying to, I suppose looking back, I feel sorry for myself. I was trying to find a strategy for myself in that loud noise to block it out, and in hindsight that was sensory overwhelm for me, and I was trying to give myself a strategy to cope, but it would have been seen then instead as a negative behaviour. So moments like that would make me feel very sad looking back. I think then as a teenager, I couldn't possibly give you all of the examples of social catastrophes that I would have gone through. And now looking back with that lens and feelings of, gosh, I feel so sorry for myself now. I wish I'd understood. I wish somebody else had understood I was autistic, but I understand why they didn't. It was a different time. I'm 41 years ago, there was definitely not that awareness and acceptance of what it is to be an autistic or neurodivergent individual like there is now. So I have no sense of somebody should have known. I wish somebody had known, but I understand why they didn't. It was a different time. But I can remember multiple, I'll say them maybe another time because they're so embarrassing, but so many teenage embarrassing moments socially when out and about that I would have got so wrong and not have been in any ways at all aware until afterwards that, oh, that was obviously because I was autistic that I picked that up wrong. I can give you one example which isn't too mortifying, and if it's my friend that's watching that remembers this, I still think about this now almost 30 years later. Back when I was a teenager, we would have gone to like what's called, depending where you are in the world, would say a teenage disco. So I would have been 13, 14, maybe 15. And one of my friends had said, oh, you come to the disco, I'm from the country, like the countryside. So it would have been a country disco. And I said, oh yes, I'll go. This is great. I'm going to go to a disco. It'd be great. And I had no clue. I said, what do you wear? And she said, just wear something comfortable. So I was like, this is great. I'll wear my favourite woolly jumper. And I think it was, if you're as old as me, there was a brand called O'Neill's. I wore an O'Neill's tracksuit bottom and a woolly jumper. And I think they were Elise or Elise, whatever that's called, runners. I'm so old. But anyway, I wore this particular outfit, and I can remember my mom trying to stop me saying, I don't think so. Are you sure it's not a dress or a top and a pants? And I was like, no, they said comfortable. This is what I go. So if you can imagine an Aran woolly jumper over a pair of leggings, or not leggings, O'Neill tracksuit bottoms, which would have been very high fashion in the sporting arena at that time. Not really, but they would have been tracksuit bottoms, essentially a loose tracksuit pants. And I wore that anyway. And when I arrived in, my friend was like, what are you wearing? And I was like, you said comfortable. And she said, I meant like she was wearing essentially a short dress. And I was like, well, that's not comfortable to me, because like I still wear cardigans now and woolly type things, and I was like, well, that's not comfortable to me. So I had to stick out the disco, which was extremely warm and busy, while everyone else was in their mini skirts and dresses and outfits, and it was sweltering. But because I decided not to wear a t-shirt underneath my woolly jumper because it would be just too clingy and annoying to my skin, I wore my woolly jumper and boiled, and then I went home and was as red as a tomato. So I always remember that as like, I feel sorry for myself because obviously I was a laughing stock then for that, but now I can giggle and be like, why did you do that? Like, you should have known. But also I understand why I didn't know, so it's okay. But for me, that would be my third kind of process of thinking, that kind of sense of, gosh, I've been mistreated a few times in my life, because I realize now it's because I was autistic. I got so many things wrong. I know now that's because I was autistic. And I think for myself, looking back now through all of those moments, I have such a sense of sadness for the young me. I used to go around the places, photos of me in my mom and dad's house, I used to go out notebooks outside taking notes of what's happening and trying to figure everything out. And I would have done the same in secondary school and not so much in college, but I was still very hyper vigilant, hyper aware that I perceived myself to get things wrong so often, that I just feel and do feel such compassion and such sadness for those moments in my life where things didn't go right or didn't go well, or I blamed myself. And one thing I do find common, not with every autistic person, because obviously I haven't spoken to every autistic person in the world, but what I do find from talking to a lot of autistic people is that they have ruminated over moments in their lives where they felt they had got things wrong, and it goes on for years and years. It's like a cycle of, I got that wrong, why did I do it, why didn't I say this? Where another person might just be like, oh sure, look, that was that. And I do find myself in that regard that now I will be like, oh, had an autism moment, it's okay, move on with your life, don't get stuck here on this moment for the next 10 years like I would have. So for me, I guess that's kind of, they're not the only thoughts or feelings I've had after going through the assessment and realising I'm autistic, but they're just three that really do stand out to me because they're ongoing, it's cyclical, and it's not in any particular order. At any time I can get a flashback of when I was younger, and I look through the lens of, I understand why that happened now. I understand that I may have been masking, and then that brings in a sense of self-doubt. Am I still masking? What's happening now? Am I being myself now, or am I trying to be a socially acceptable version of myself? And I find myself having these moments of flashbacks of really difficult moments in my life and just feeling so sad and wishing I had known then that I was autistic. And if I could go back, I would go back to the young Amanda, and I would tell the young Amanda that it was okay to be different, and that it was okay that she loved rainbows, and that it was okay she surrounded herself in her and her sister's bedroom. It was basically a library with books and research, and that it was okay to do those things because she was different, and being different was okay. That being autistic is not a bad thing. It's actually an incredible thing to be different and to be unique. And that's what I wish, if I could do anything, I wish I could go back and give my young self a hug and say, it is difficult right now, but at the age of 39, I wish it was going to be sooner, but at the age of 39, you're going to find out that you're autistic. And when you do, it'll all suddenly start to make sense, and you'll suddenly have this sense of, it's okay to be me, it's okay to have difficult moments, it's okay that you don't fit in, because you don't really want to fit in, you just want to be yourself, and now finally you can. And it has been a hard journey to get here, but you're really doing so well now that you have, and you have an incredible community online that supports you, and then also in your day-to-day life as well, that isn't, say, online. So that's what I would do now if I could. So there you go. There's just three thought kind of processes, feelings that I do find myself constantly going through, or coming, it kind of comes in waves. If you're finding it's different for yourself, I would love to hear in the comments or through my social media, which I will link somehow below. And just remember, it is okay to be different, that you don't have to be like anybody else. Being your true self is what's most important, if that is what's most important to yourself, which it is for me, really, I suppose. I suppose I'm still on that journey of self-discovery, and I've been so thankful that I finally got the nerve on New Year's Eve to start a YouTube channel and to pop up my very first video, and I'm so thankful for all the lovely comments and support. Genuinely I am. So I'll go now and leave you back to your day or evening or night or wherever you're watching this in the world. So thank you so much. I'll hopefully post a new video again next week. So thank you so much. Have a lovely day, evening or night wherever you are in the world. And if you feel like subscribing, I'd be very thankful. But again, no pressure. So bye guys. Thank you.